We're going to move a little bit closer to home now with the next presentation. I'm going to be introducing Steve Donovan, and he will be speaking about the future of RPAS for, well, it is out of sight, and he'll be talking about the BVLOS Innovation Center. Steve is the operations manager at the Foremost UAS Test Range and for the Beyond Visual Line of Sight Innovation Center, or BVLOS Inc. Their primary service removes barriers for clients to transition from visual line of sight, or VLOS, to BVLOS. Before his current position, Steve worked in the defense industry for over 30 years in several different roles, including being a defense contractor in the Canadian Arctic, Alaska, and in the Middle East for over 20 years. His wealth of experience is crucial to the Foremost UAS Test Range and the BVLOS Innovation Center, and Steve will be talking about the out-of-sight future.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction here. Very excited, very ecstatic. 2019 is when I started here and didn't know a thing about drone operations. Knew a lot about airfield operations, safety, and all that stuff there throughout my career. So when I came on board, actually, as I go through this presentation here, see if I can get this right. Maybe I'm going the wrong way. Yeah, Steve, hold it the right way. Sorry about that. Okay, so BVLOS Innovation Center. So these acronyms, thanks to Roger and that, we've gone through these, we've repeated them, but these are the ones you're going to hear quite often throughout this presentation. RPAS, Remotely Piloted Aircraft System, or commonly known as a drone, or an unmanned aircraft system, and then visual line of sight and beyond visual line of sight. On the outline here, we'll be looking at BVLOS Innovation Center, an overview, the strategic partnership that we have here with the Foremost UAS Test Range, SkySense's Airworthiness Project, the expertise and background that we possess, and then BVLOS Innovation Center itself. We've got what our mission is, grow the ecosystem, and then most importantly here is the barrier transition from VLOS to BVLOS, and the growth in the BVLOS industry, and then BVLOS innovation itself guiding you throughout this transition to be able to accomplish BVLOS. So our strategic partnership here with the Village of Foremost, BVLOS Inc., we wear several hats. I'm the operations manager. Right at the Village of Foremost there we have our test range. And so we partnered and manage and oversee the test range here for the village. And with that there, we also, as pointed out earlier, there's one of two test ranges in Canada. So the gym right here in southeast Alberta, right in Foremost, is one of those test ranges. And Above Partnership provides the RPAS operations, the capabilities to transcend from the visual line of sight to beyond visual line of sight. This is just a little shot over here where Foremost is for folks that have never been into this location. So we take a look at here on the airspace itself. There's over 700 square miles of airspace. And if we look at it, it's contiguous airspace that people are able to fly right out to the airport is where our infrastructure is located. And on the infrastructure, we have a hangar. It's got a 60-foot wing door on there. We'll see some pictures afterwards there. So we can accomplish quite a large RPAS platform out there. With that, we have a runway. So for fixed wing applications, we have asphalt 3,000-foot runway out there. So whether it be a fixed application or vertical takeoff landing right out of the aerodrome and into the CYR airspaces from there. And then some of the surface features, of course, in Foremost, is rural Alberta. So the agriculture, pasture land, farming community there. We have a lot of waterways through there. We have a lot of power infrastructure, road infrastructure out through there. We're able to do a lot of testing and evaluation with various clients out there. And on the last one here, So we look at, our partnership is very important, and this one here for the aspect there, with our partnerships that we have made available here, with our authorities and that there, without them, we wouldn't be able to be where we're at today. So a lot of this partnership and that there, where we talk in the Sky Senses project with ArcField and our strategic partners with that. Transport Canada and NAV Canada plays an integral role with our day-to-day operation and also the growth as we're continuing to grow as well. So this is just a snapshot picture here. CYR is Class F airspace out at Foremost Aerodrome is where we launch, as I mentioned. And with that, that's sort of on the top, almost to the left side there. The boundary line, CYR 234, that's just south of Highway 61. That's surface to 10,000 feet, so that's above sea level. We're approximately 2,900 feet above sea level where we're at. So for argument's sake, 6,100 feet. And then cross-section over what we call Highway 879 East, a larger airspace, CYR 235. That's from 4,000 ASL to 10,000 feet. And the reason for that, when they did an aeronautical study, there was a local farmer who was actually the former mayor at the time, who was a big stakeholder to getting this airspace activated with Transport Canada. He had a little grass strip there, so he wanted to fly underneath the range. So he could fly up to 1,100 feet if we ever had that airspace activated. And then we have CYR 236. So that stretches all the way from the west boundary all the way to the east boundary. And that is from 10,000 feet all the way up to 18,000 feet ASL. So that is for a lot of the bigger platforms that need to have the range and also the altitude out there. So this is just some of the flight testing, a variety of different pictures, some of the clients that we've had out there. You can see up on the top there, that's Arium flying one of their EBXs there. We had SATE on the top right-hand side flying one of their Swiss drones at the time there. And then various ground control stations. And then our hangar door opened, so you can see some drove of activity there. And then up on the bottom center, I guess, that was a picture of myself and one of my summer students. We have a ground-based radar system there that we use for operational purposes, developed from Canadian UAVS. One of our strategic partners that Deneen mentioned earlier was the catalyst how they got their beyond visual line of sight SFOC Canada-wide for uncontrolled Class G. So this shows some of the action from any particular day flying out in Foremost. So if we take a look here, Project Sky Senses, well, that kind of put together, a development here with our skill set. We were looking at it as far as the airworthiness program, and then we utilized for detect and avoid system, so that's one of the big things there of Canadian UVS, and then Arium's part of the testing through there. And so we were able to capture all that there to help enhance with this airworthiness program to be able to build our own services, which is a spin-off from the Sky Senses itself. So we offer a lot of programming experience within the BVLOS Innovation Center itself. With our company, we've got a set of engineers, technical type background individuals. So we've got like over 90 years of programming experience, D&D type environment, which is part of the UAS environment that they produce with that. Some of the advancement for technology capability, well, myself, I'm a radar technical background, 30 plus years, and also managing the Foremost UAS test range itself, ensuring operational safety. We do that there with our airworthiness type program here that we've developed, and building the trust, and that's pretty important. So our relationships we have with Transport Canada, NAV Canada, and some of the associations that we belong with is like Canadac, for example, Canadian Drone Association. We're part of the committee meeting with Transport Canada on a regular basis to go beyond the barriers and come up with the solutions as part of our stakeholder solutions on that side. So with this one here, the technology, operational, and regulatory, This builds for BVLOS Innovation Center, the second hat we have on here. And so with that particular specific goals set for the airworthiness program itself here. So BVLOS Innovation Center, we look to grow the drone ecosystem, and one is by advancing the capability. So we have a variety of projects that we're undergoing here right now to do that. Ensuring safety, so as presenters pointed out earlier on, like the Edmonton International Airport, whether you're doing the municipality project with Sky Census, Deneen and Amy were talking about, everything revolves with Transport Canada around safety, how they be able to launch that, and then of course the building trust. So having the trust with BVLOS Innovation Center, we've had a multiple of clients and customers over the years that we've been able to assist and help to go from that transition of VLOS to BVLOS. So looking at that transition, VLOS to BVLOS, so you got VLOS on one end and BVLOS on the other end. I like to refer that as the 4 ACEs. So the transition to BVLOS would increase the RPAS efficiencies where the tasks are a lot faster, better, and more accurately. And safety, where we're going to look at the removal of people from some of those tedious and hazardous conditions, and the effectiveness of service delivery, both data and goods. So the first A is awareness. That's the standards fed regulations, and the regulations of Transport Canada are modest, but they are evolving. So currently there's a need, as we pointed out, Roger mentioned on his presentation, anything beyond visual line of sight, you need a special flight operating certificate, and that's required for any of those flights. And along with that, Transport Canada requires a very extensive operational risk assessment, or known as an ORA. And so a combination of both of those in order to advance. So for the RPAS organization, they must commit to a strong support and governance to achieve that required safety status. So that organization, they need to understand what their commitment is to transcend to BVLOS, and then they got to determine, is this something for the expected outcome that merits the efforts required? Because it's a very extensive program to go through that process to get that waiver of Transport Canada. So the second A is assessment. This is where that RPAS organization defines the BVLOS intention with a detailed concept of operation, or CONOPS. And that in turn, if you're like looking at the same thing as aircraft model, you're looking at the air and the ground risks entitled, or that go with that particular platform that they're going to be flying. And so with that, this case is going to take a lot of extensive work, especially as the bigger platforms are being looking to fly BVLOS. And so an iteration is required. So as you're going through all these different steps along the way, very time consuming, very tedious to be able to test and eval, rinse and repeat as many times as required. So once the CONOPS is set, then an extensive audit of the organization's current state of readiness is conducted, and this is required across the technical, operational, and investigative and audit requirements. So the third A, amelioration or improving, that's to identify information gaps to meet the required risk profile that are used to identify specific technical and operational testing and procedural improvements. And then with that is the advancement. So after you've gathered the evidence required for that desired CONOPS, a full SFOC ORA, it can then be submitted to Transport Canada for review. Typically, Transport Canada on the SFOCs that we generate, even at the where we have sterile airspace with the foremost UAS test range, goes back 1 or 2 times as required. These ones flying out of the sterile airspace is going to probably require several times back and forth to Transport Canada for evaluation. So once that's been reviewed, then if they have got all the clarity evidence that they need, they may even after that give you a special waiver or special SFOC, and there may be specific conditions put under it there. So BVLOS, Inc., we act here as a Sherpa, or to be able to guide the manufacturer or the organization to transcend from BVLOS to BVLOS, and with that testing and the matrix that we can provide and the services, and a lot of that operational flight testing would then be repeated and done as necessary right at the foremost UAS test range. So this one here, we're looking at just the UAS and the AAM market. So if you take a look here, the UAS market, approximately 28 billion. And then the next one over here, this is the next phase, as Edmonton International pointed out here. So that's the AAM market here. So there you're looking at being able to evolve on any of these markets. The important merit, the holy grail, as somebody pointed out earlier, is that beyond visual line of sight. So in order for companies to obtain part of that market, they need to get to BVLOS, and that AAM market, that size is much larger, characterized by eVTOL, or electric vertical takeoff landing aircraft. But even then, that's more parallel with the synergies of a UAS, so it develops the best testing with UAS itself. So clearly, this significant economic benefits from the growth of BVLOS can be realized. So from a small business perspective, we see the benefits of BVLOS such as 3 to 10 times multiplier for drone operators. And here in Alberta, and this has probably grown up since we've last looked at the numbers, but there's over 500 plus operators here in Alberta alone, over 1,000 in Western Canada, and over 50,000 in North America. And that number just keeps growing and growing. And BVLOS has also shown from the clients that we've worked with, a 2 to 4 times multiplier for jobs that we've assisted here in the past. At BVLOS Inc., with our combined services of the foremost test range, we position ourselves as an agnostic service where we can transcend the companies from that VLOS to BVLOS and then be part of that so that those companies or those organizations can be part of that fast-paced and lucrative global market. And there's just my contact page. So again, I'm the local boy at Foremost. Kind of did a full circle 30 years later. I did high school, junior high in Foremost, and then came back from my Middle East tour, and I've been working at Foremost. And we've got Doug Hanna, he's our founder, CEO, and Chris Brzezinski up there. So these are 3 primary contacts, and we've got other people in here as well. Steve Bogner is one of my colleagues working at Sky Senses and does a lot of working here with us in itself. So with that, I guess I'll leave it to some Q&A.
Thank you very much, Steve. That was quite interesting. Actually, I have about 37 questions myself, but not quite fair. The first one, actually, I had this question. Do you share any of the airworthiness test results publicly?
Yeah, so sharing the airworthiness. So a lot of this stuff here, because a lot of these platforms are, I'll say that they're like stealth mode. So we got NDAs with a lot of different clients that we're using on. So when you look at if you're talking airworthiness, we offer on their platform, they provide us information that we would not share. But if it's something like with the Sky Senses project, with that there we're doing RPAS, traffic management, airworthiness. So we're looking at products that we can perform with the service. So when somebody comes to us and looks at, hey, you know, I want to go that transition from VLOS to BVLOS, so it's a case-by-case study. So Transport Canada has a matrix. If anyone has done BVLOS SFOCs, it's an SFOC matrix for BVLOS, and each of the questions they ask, technical, operational, training, third-party validation, as they're going through each of the specific steps, those are the things that we help, you know, potential clients or past clients with.
Thank you. One of the questions there is the frequency of incursions into the airspace and how successfully is, I believe, Transport Canada identifying the aircraft and the operator?
Okay, well, I can't answer for all incursions, I guess, but even where I'm at, the foremost UAS test range, you know, you hammer the thing about safety, safety, safety. So I'm the range safety officer, as an example. We were running a mission. We have a NOTAM, so our CYR airspace is NOTAM'd out for all aviation that could be flying the area, whether we talk drone or aircrafts ourselves. We send out messages by email, by text messages to all the local stakeholders, anybody that's the flying community or people that have need access to the aerodrome itself. So even with all that information out there, I had one incident since the last 3 years I've been out there, and that incursion occurred with this guy that owned his own airline. He was an oil and gas type service industry itself. He wanted to fly his own plane. So he didn't look at what was out, what was a NOTAM. He just asked his air company, hey, I'm going to fly. And he flew into Foremost, and actually with our radar, we picked him up on the radar. I had him on communication with the airband, and the drone company that I had flying were safe down south of the CYR airspace. And by the time I got hold of the pilot, he figured out he didn't know where the Foremost airport was to land. We did guide him back on the aircom. So had one incursion. That's the only one I can report because I don't have the records of what Transport Canada has. But anytime there is an incursion, I have a responsibility to report that to Transport Canada.
Thank you. Next one is, can a fire department get a blanket BVLOS approval for their program instead of an SFOC for a specific operation? In other words, standing approval.
Yeah, so the quick answer to that is no. The reason for that one there is, again, they need to have something put together. So an SFOC, you know, at this stage, there's no regulations. Transport Canada on the VLOS has regulations out. They're looking at this past year and a half at the low risk, which is like uncontrolled Class G, under 25 kilogram, below 400 feet. So they're looking, and even those, they still require an SFOC. So for the fire department, flying BVLOS, they're going to have to put together, the good thing about it, depending on the area, if it's a rural type environment, much easier. If it's an urban center, there's controlled areas to take in consideration. So again, just like any other entity, they have to put together that comprehensive, all the documentation, that operational risk assessment. And when and if they get that, the good news about it is you can have it for 1 year. And then with that 1 year on that specific airspace, you're authorized to fly. There'll be conditions like that. SFOC may list about 50 different conditions. One, notification to the controlled airspace is primarily number one. And two is, what are your checklists before you fly, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, so long-winded answer, but that's the show on that one.
Well, there's one coming I think you might appreciate, which is, how does a company connect with you, and what is the process for assessing projects?
Right, good question there. So I do have a booth out here. I'll be here in between breaks, lunch, and then after the conference. So please feel free. For anyone that's virtual, I think all the information of the speakers is going to be shared afterwards, I believe. So please feel free to reach out to myself or any of my colleagues on the contact information if you're not here. And we'll be happy to be able to assist you in any way we can.
At least two more questions. One is with regard to the nature of the market, the $28 billion that's noted for the UAV. How much of that is military, and how much would you suggest is other commercial application?
Yeah, so that particular market review, a lot of that one there was predominantly was on the commercial side there, because that's what they were targeting on there. When you're looking at the military application, that's a whole different segment itself, you know, for the different type of applications out there. But yeah, so majority of that there was commercial.
Thank you. So there's one more, which is, can a person come out to the F-class airspace and fly a drone?
And fly there? Is that the answer?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so another good question. And that's the reason why we do a NOTAM. For any pilot that flies, they should be looking at their airspace from A to B. I'll have a NOTAM published, and it'll tell specific, you know, 24 to 48 hours with the agreement we have with NAV Canada Flight Information Center in Edmonton. So we'll have that published NOTAM. And if that NOTAM is active, then the answer is no, you cannot fly that particular day or that particular period of time.
Okay, I have a question of curiosity myself. Is there any advantage to, for example, coalition of, let's say, fire departments. If 8 fire departments got together and had the same technical package, could they work as a coalition to get permission, or is it so customized at the moment that each of the 8 would need to do it separately?
Yeah, so a lot of that, one of the things that's picked out is the insurance liability. So when you take a look at a coalition of 8 fire departments as an example, you got to carry your own insurance. However, with that being in mind, if the conditions are very similar, and if they're putting a program together, all the documentation, if they're flying the same type platforms, then there's nothing saying that they can't get together. That's 7, 8 different companies, and then put under their own SFOC, whatever that airspace, because obviously they're going to be, as part of that, you got to do a site survey. So this is where we're flying at, this is where we're flying at. And so that would be a tremendous cost saver. Because I can tell you from the scratch up, putting documentation like operations manuals, all your emergency procedures, all your contingencies, site surveying, training manuals, putting all that together for those that have not done it, that in itself is time consuming. So that would be the benefit I'd see there, is just getting this similar documentation put together.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I see actually no further questions on Slido. So if there's none in the audience, well, thank you very much for your presentation and the information. And again, I'm quite confident his contact information will be shared so that people can reach out to you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.